The great war chamber floated in the darkness of space, circling the dying planet below. Inside, the most powerful beings in the galaxy had gathered to discuss their survival. The Dominion was coming. They had already destroyed 17 civilizations, burning worlds to ash and enslaving billions. Now they wanted more. High Commander stood at the center of the chamber. He was 8 feet tall with skin like gray stone. His people were born warriors. They did not bleed easily. They did not break. Behind him sat the delegates, swift hunters with 4 arms and eyes that could see in total darkness. Near them, the floated in their liquid pods, their pale bodies pulsing with telepathic energy. These were the strongest species in the Galactic Alliance. Together, they had fought the Dominion for 60 years. Together, they were losing. "Our forces grow weaker every month," said, his deep voice filling the chamber. "We need more soldiers. We need anyone who can fight." "There is one species," a commander said slowly. "They call themselves humans. They come from a small planet at the edge of known space. They have offered to send soldiers." Had heard of humans, small creatures, soft skin, fragile bones. They lived short lives and spent a third of that time sleeping. He almost laughed. "Humans, they are barely more than animals. What can they offer us?" "They are persistent," the replied. "And they volunteered. No one else is volunteering." Waved his massive hand. "Fine, bring them. We will find some quiet corner for them to die in." The doors of the war chamber opened 3 days later. Captain Park walked in first. He was not tall by human standards, but he moved with quiet confidence. His uniform was simple and clean. His face showed nothing, no fear, no anger, no pride. Behind him came Lieutenant, a woman with sharp eyes and a scar along her neck. She carried a data pad and walked like someone who had seen death many times and no longer feared it. Following them were the officers of the 77th Expeditionary Force, 200 human soldiers waiting in transport ships outside, 200 soft, breakable creatures who had crossed half the galaxy to fight someone else's war. The chamber fell silent as the humans entered. Then, slowly, the laughter began. It started with an officer who could not control himself. Then a general joined in, his rocky body shaking. Soon the whole chamber was filled with the sound of alien amusement. They did not laugh. They simply projected waves of pity and contempt that washed over everyone present. Stepped forward, towering over Captain. The human's head barely reached the alien's chest. "These are our reinforcements," asked. "Creatures who die from falling down, who cannot survive in heat or cold, who need to breathe every few seconds." Captain looked up at the massive alien. His expression did not change. "We volunteered for the front line," he said simply. More laughter. An officer wiped tears from 2 of his 4 eyes. "The front line. Little human, do you understand what that means? The Dominion has soldiers who can tear through metal with their bare hands. They have weapons that turn air into fire. Your people will die in minutes." Lieutenant spoke for the first time. Her voice was calm and clear. "Then we will die fighting. That is what soldiers do." The laughter slowly faded. Something in her voice made the aliens uncomfortable. Not fear, not bravado, something else. Something they could not name. Studied the humans for a long moment. These creatures were clearly insane. They had come halfway across the galaxy to die for species that mocked them. There was no logic in it, no survival instinct. "Very well," he said finally. "We have a position for you, valley on the planet below. Our scouts report Dominion forces gathering there. We need someone to hold the line while we prepare our main defenses." Everyone in the chamber knew what this meant. Valley was a death trap. The Dominion had been building their strength there for weeks. Anyone sent to that position was not expected to return. Captain nodded once. "We accept." "You understand," said slowly, "that you will receive no reinforcements, no air support, no evacuation if things go wrong." "We understand." Looked at Lieutenant, then at the other human officers. He searched their faces for doubt, for fear, for sanity. He found none. "Then go, and may whatever gods you believe in have mercy on you." The humans turned and walked out of the chamber. They did not hurry. They did not look back. 3 hours later, the 77th Expeditionary Force landed in Valley. The sky was gray with smoke from distant fires. The ground was black and cracked. Nothing grew here. Nothing lived here. Sergeant Menu was the first to step off the transport. He was older than most soldiers, with gray at his temples and scars that told stories he never shared. He had fought in Earth's last war, the conflict that had nearly destroyed humanity before they reached the stars. He knew what real battle looked like. "Beautiful place," he said dryly, looking at the dead landscape. Corporal stepped out behind him, carrying her medical equipment. She was small, even for a human, but her hands were steady and her mind was sharp. She had saved more lives than she could count. "Set up the medical station near those rocks," she ordered her team. "We are going to need it." Private Hand came last, carrying her rifle like it was part of her body. She was barely 20 years old, the youngest soldier in the unit. Her eyes were already scanning the horizon, measuring distances, calculating angles. She was a sniper. She had been shooting since she was 12. She had never missed a target that mattered. Captain gathered his officers as the sun began to set. "The aliens think we are here to die," he said quietly. "They think we are weak, small, fragile." He paused and looked at each of them. "Let them think that. We know what we are." Lieutenant pulled up a map on her data pad. "Dominion forces are massing to the north. Our scouts estimate 3,000 soldiers, maybe more. They will attack within days." 3,000 against 200, Sergeant said. "I have seen worse odds." "When?" someone asked. "Earth Sol 2157. He did not elaborate. No one asked him to. That night the humans did not sleep. They dug. They built walls. They set traps. They prepared positions and escape routes and backup plans for their backup plans. Far above, in the orbital station, High Commander watched through long-range sensors. He saw the tiny figures moving in the darkness, working without rest. "What are they doing?" his aide asked. "Preparing to die, I assume." "Should we not help them?" Shook his head. "They wanted the front line. They have it. We will honor their sacrifice when the Dominion overruns them." He turned away from the screen. It should not take long. But as he walked away, something bothered him. A small thought he could not shake. The humans had not looked afraid. They had not looked brave either. They had looked like something else. They had looked ready. Push the thought away. It did not matter. The humans were weak. Everyone knew that. The Dominion would crush them, and the Alliance would find the time they needed to prepare their real defenses. He was certain of it. He was wrong. They called human soldiers weak. Then the battlefield went silent. The attack came at dawn on the third day. Private Hand saw them first. She was lying flat on a ridge, her rifle pressed against her shoulder, her eye looking through the scope. The Dominion army moved like a dark wave across the valley floor. 3,000 soldiers, heavy armor, plasma cannons that could melt stone. Behind them, massive war machines crawled forward on metal legs. "Contact," she whispered into her radio. "They are coming." Captain received the message in the command bunker. He looked at Lieutenant. Neither of them showed surprise. They had been waiting for this. "All units," said calmly into the radio, "take positions. Hold fire until my command." Far above, in the orbital station, High Commander received word of the attack. He pulled up the sensor display and watched the Dominion army approach the human position. His aide stood beside him. "Should we send help?" the aide asked. "No, there is no point. Watch. This will be over in minutes." The Dominion commander was named. He had conquered 11 worlds. He had never lost a battle. When his scouts told him that only 200 humans defended the valley, he laughed. This would not be a battle. This would be a cleaning operation. He gave the order to advance. The first wave of Dominion soldiers charged across the open ground. They expected the humans to run. Every other species ran when they saw such overwhelming force. Running was logical. Running was survival. The humans did not run. They waited. When the Dominion soldiers were 200 meters away, Captain spoke one word into his radio. Now. The ground exploded. The humans had spent 3 days planting traps, hiding explosives, preparing kill zones. The first wave of Dominion soldiers disappeared in fire and smoke. Bodies flew through the air. Screams filled the morning. Before the dust could settle, the humans opened fire. Lieutenant commanded the eastern wall. She moved between positions, calm and focused, directing fire where it was needed most. When a soldier fell wounded beside her, she pulled him to cover with one hand while shooting with the other. Sergeant Menu held the northern trench. The Dominion sent 50 soldiers to overwhelm his position. He had 15 humans with him. The Dominion soldiers were bigger, stronger, better armored, but had been fighting since before most of them were born. He knew where to shoot. He knew when to move. He knew how to make every bullet count. When his rifle ran empty, he pulled his knife and kept fighting. On the ridge, Private Hand began her work. She found the Dominion officers through her scope, the ones giving orders, the ones directing the attack. One by one, she removed them. Her shoulder ached from the rifle's kick. Her eye burned from staring through the scope. She did not stop. A plasma bolt hit the rocks beside her. Fragments cut her arm. She ignored the pain and found her next target. Commander watched the battle through his command screen. His confidence was fatting. He had sent 800 soldiers. More than half were already dead or wounded. The human position should have fallen in the first 5 minutes. It had been 2 hours. Send the second wave, he ordered. All units overwhelm them. More Dominion soldiers poured into the valley. The humans were surrounded on 3 sides. Their ammunition was running low. Their walls were crumbling. Any logical species would surrender now. Any sane creature would accept defeat. Corporal worked in the medical station as bullets cracked overhead. A soldier was brought to her with a hole in his chest. His lung was collapsing. By every medical standard, he should have died in minutes. Refused to let him. She cut into his chest with steady hands, ignoring the explosions outside. She found the wound. She sealed it. She pumped air into his remaining lung until his heart stabilized. "You are not dying today," she told him. "I do not allow it." 20 minutes later, the soldier was back on the wall with a rifle in his hands. He could barely breathe. He could not stand straight, but he could shoot. Captain moved through the chaos like a ghost. He appeared where the fighting was worst, soldiers who were ready to break, and plugged holes in the defense with his own body if necessary. A Dominion blade had cut his face. Blood ran into his eye. He wiped it away and kept moving. "Hold the line," he said again and again. "Hold the line." The battle lasted until sunset. When the smoke cleared, the valley floor was covered with Dominion dead. 800 enemy soldiers, maybe more. The humans had lost 12, with 30 wounded. Every wounded soldier who could hold a weapon was back in position before nightfall. Commander stared at the battlefield report. He read it 3 times. He threw it across his command ship. "This is impossible," he said. "They are weak. They have no armor, no natural weapons. They should all be dead." His aide had no answer. Far above, High Commander received the same report. He sat in silence for a long time. His aide watched him nervously. "Sir, the humans, they survived." "I can see that." "How?" Did not answer immediately. He was thinking about what he had seen on the sensors. The humans had not fought like other species. They did not retreat when wounded. They did not surrender when surrounded. They dragged their bleeding friends to safety and then went back to fight. They took injuries that should have killed them and kept shooting. "I do not know," admitted finally. "I do not understand these creatures." He pulled up the human medical files that Earth had provided. He read through their biology: soft skin, weak bones, no natural armor, no regeneration. They needed to sleep, to eat, to breathe constantly. They died from heat, from cold, from disease, from injury. They were, by every measure, the weakest intelligent species in the galaxy. And yet they had just fought a battle that should have killed them all. They had killed 800 enemy soldiers with 200 troops. They had refused to die. "Get me a communication channel," said. "I want to speak with the human commander." Captain answered the call from the bunker. His face was covered in blood and dirt. His eyes were tired but alert. "Hi, Commander," he said. "What can I do for you?" "You survived." "Yes." "How?" Was quiet for a moment. Behind him could hear the sounds of the human soldiers, talking, laughing, helping the wounded. They sounded almost cheerful. "We did not want to die," said simply, "so we did not." "That is not an answer." "It is the only answer I have." Ended the call. He sat alone in his command chamber for a long time, staring at the planet below. The humans should have died. Every calculation said so. Every prediction confirmed it. They were outnumbered, surrounded by enemies who wanted them dead. They had survived anyway. Did not understand. But for the first time since the humans had arrived, he began to wonder if perhaps he had been wrong about them. Perhaps everyone had been wrong. In the valley below, the humans buried their dead. 12 soldiers, 12 friends. They dug the graves by hand, even though they were exhausted, even though their bodies screamed for rest. "We will remember them," Captain said as they stood around the graves, "and we will make sure they did not die for nothing." Then they went back to their positions and started preparing for the next attack. It was going to be a long war. They were ready. They called human soldiers weak. Then the battlefield went silent. Commander was losing his patience. 2 weeks had passed since the first attack. The humans were still alive. They had no right to be alive, but they were. Every assault failed. Every strategy crumbled. The small, soft creatures in the valley refused to die. So called for There were legends in the Dominion. They were assassins trained from birth, creatures of darkness and silence. They could move through any security, kill any target, disappear without a trace. In 300 years, they had never failed a mission. Sent 12 of them to kill the human commanders. Without leaders, he thought, the humans would scatter like frightened animals. They arrived at the human camp at midnight. They moved through the darkness like smoke, invisible to sensors, silent as death. They had studied the human patrol patterns. They knew exactly where Captain slept. This would be easy. It was not easy. Sergeant Menu was waiting for them. He sat alone near the command bunker, cleaning his knife in the darkness. They saw him but did not consider him a threat. He was one old human. They were 12 elite killers. They moved past him toward their target. The first died before he knew he was in danger. His knife went through his throat in one smooth motion. The second died a heartbeat later. The third tried to scream, did not let him. The remaining turned to fight, but by then it was too late. The camp had awakened. Human soldiers appeared from everywhere, from trenches, from bunkers, from positions they had not detected. Lieutenant led a team that cut off their escape. Private Hand shot 3 of them from the darkness before they could find cover. In 4 minutes, 11 were dead. 1 was captured. Sergeant brought the survivor to an empty bunker. The creature was terrified. It had never felt terror before. It had always been the hunter, never the prey. Now it understood what prey felt. "How?" they gasped. "How did you know we were coming?" Pulled up a chair and sat down slowly. His old bones ached, but his eyes were sharp and cold. "You think darkness is your weapon," he said quietly. "You think silence belongs to you, but humans evolved as persistent predators. Do you know what that means?" They did not answer. "Our ancestors were not fast. They were not strong. They had no claws, no fangs, no armor. but they could follow prey for days without stopping. They could track any creature across any terrain, and they learned to hunt at night in darkness, in silence. Leaned forward. The dark is not something we fear. It is where we learn to hunt. Over the following days, the Dominion forces began to experience something new: terror. Their patrols disappeared. Not killed in battle, just gone. Soldiers who walked into the fog never walked out. Guards who stood watch at night were found dead in the morning, their throats cut, no sign of who had killed them. Human squads moved through terrain that should have been impossible. They crossed toxic marshland. They climbed cliffs without ropes. They appeared behind fortified positions, killed everyone inside, and vanished before reinforcements arrived. Lieutenant led the most daring raid. Her team of 20 soldiers destroyed 3 Dominion supply depots in one night. They traveled 40 kilometers through enemy territory, killed over 100 guards, and returned without losing a single soldier. When High Commander asked her how they crossed the poisonous swamp that should have killed them all, she gave a simple answer: "We held our breath and moved fast." The general stared at her for a long moment. He was beginning to understand something about humans. They did not accept limits. If something was impossible, they did it anyway. If terrain was too dangerous, they found a way through. If the odds were against them, they changed the odds. Commander intercepted a message from one of his own soldiers. It was filled with a word he had not heard before, a word that was spreading through Dominion forces like a disease. Ghosts. The humans were ghosts. They appeared from nowhere. They killed without warning. They could not be stopped because they could not be found. His army was falling apart. His soldiers were afraid to sleep. They jumped at shadows. They shot at sounds in the night and found nothing there. Morale was collapsing. He sent a message to his superiors asking for more troops. The reply came back quickly. Reinforcements were on their way. 50,000 soldiers, the largest force the Dominion had ever sent to a single battle. It would take 6 weeks for them to arrive. In the meantime, his forces had to survive. They did not do a good job of it. Sergeant Menu led night raids that destroyed ammunition stores and fuel depots. Corporal developed a chemical that contaminated Dominion water supplies, making their soldiers sick for days. Private Hand continued her patient work, removing officers and communication specialists one bullet at a time. And Captain planned. He knew the reinforcements were coming. He knew 50,000 soldiers would overwhelm his 200. He needed time. He needed to weaken the enemy. He needed to make them afraid. So he did. High Commander requested a meeting with the human captain. They met in a neutral location, a small station between the orbital platform and the planet's surface. Had to bend down to fit through the human-sized door. "Your species," he said slowly. "What are you?" Considered the question. "Survivors." That is not an answer. It is the only answer that matters. Paused. Earth was not kind to us. Ice ages nearly killed us. Predators hunted us. Diseases wiped out millions. We almost went extinct a dozen times before we even developed technology. But you survived. Yes, we always survive. That is what we do. Studied the small human. 2 weeks ago he had dismissed this species as weak and useless. Now he was not sure what they were. They fought like no species he had ever seen. They did not give up. They did not break. They adapted and evolved and found new ways to kill. "You are still fragile," said. "I have seen your wounded soldiers, would survive injuries that kill your people." "Yes," agreed. "We break easily, we bleed, we die." He met the alien's eyes. "But we heal, we remember, and we do not stop, ever." "The Dominion is sending 50,000 soldiers." "I know. You cannot defeat them, not with 200 troops." "Probably not." "Then why do you keep fighting?" Captain was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but steady. "Because someone has to. Because the Dominion will not stop until everything is burned and everyone is dead. Because we would rather die fighting than live knowing we did nothing. He stood up from the table. We are weak, we know that. Everyone keeps telling us, but weakness is not the same as helplessness. We have been weak since the beginning, we are still here. The saber-toothed cats are not. The dinosaurs are not. 100 species that were bigger and stronger and faster than us are gone. We remain. He walked toward the door, then stopped and looked back. The Dominion thinks they are the predators and we are the prey. They are wrong. They have always been wrong. Watched the human leave. He sat alone for a long time, thinking about what he had heard. The humans were weak, that was true, but they were also something else. They were dangerous. And the Dominion was about to learn just how dangerous weak creatures could be. They called human soldiers weak. Then the battlefield went silent. Day 47, the sky burned. The Dominion reinforcements had arrived. 50,000 soldiers surrounded Valley. War machines blocked every exit. Orbital ships hung above, ready to turn the ground to glass. Commander had waited for this moment. Now the humans would finally die. The bombardment began at midnight. Fire fell from the sky for 6 hours. Plasma cannons turned rock into liquid. Explosive shells shattered the earth. The ground shook like something alive and screaming. From orbit, the valley looked like a wound in the planet, glowing red and orange. When the bombardment ended, gave the order to advance. Kill everything, he said, leave nothing alive. 50,000 Dominion soldiers marched into the smoke and ash. They expected to find craters and corpses. They expected to walk over the broken bodies of the humans who had caused so much trouble. They found trenches. Miles of trenches, tunnels connecting every position, bunkers reinforced with metal salvaged from destroyed Dominion equipment. For 6 weeks, while they raided and harassed and killed, the humans had also been digging. Every night, every hour they could spare, they had carved a fortress into the dead earth. Corporal had built a medical station deep underground. During the bombardment, she had saved 37 soldiers who should have died. Her hands had not stopped moving for 6 hours. We are still here, she told each soldier she saved. We are still fighting. The Battle of Black Ridge lasted 9 days. On the first day, the Dominion sent 10,000 soldiers into the trenches. Human defenders fought them hand to hand in the narrow passages. Sergeant Menu held a junction point with 7 soldiers for 4 hours, falling back inch by inch, making the enemy pay for every step. When they ran out of ammunition, they fought with knives. When the knives broke, they fought with rocks and fists and teeth. By sunset, the Dominion had advanced 200 meters. They had lost 3,000 soldiers. On the third day, Dominion forces tried to flank the human position. Private Hand climbed to a ridge that offered no cover, no protection, nothing but a clear view of the enemy approach. It was suicide. Everyone knew it was suicide. She stayed there for 18 hours. Her rifle barrel glowed red from heat. Dominion snipers targeted her position constantly. A bullet took off 2 of her fingers. Shrapnel cut her face. Blood filled her left eye and she could barely see. She kept firing. When reinforcements finally reached her, she had killed over 200 enemy soldiers. The Dominion advance on that side had completely stopped. "What is your kill count?" she asked as they carried her to the medical station. "We do not know," someone answered. "Find out," she said. "I want to know." Then she passed out. On the 5th day, the Dominion broke through the eastern wall. Lieutenant led a counterattack that should have been impossible. 40 humans against 500 Dominion soldiers. She did not retreat. She did not hesitate. She ran straight at the enemy line with a rifle in one hand and a blade in the other. Her soldiers followed. The fighting was savage. Took a wound to her side that should have stopped her. She kept fighting. A Dominion soldier grabbed her throat. She stabbed him in the eye and kept fighting. When her rifle jammed, she beat an enemy to death with the stock and took his weapon. By nightfall, the breach was sealed. The eastern wall held. Refused to go to the medical station until every other wounded soldier had been treated first. On the seventh day, Captain made a decision that terrified his allies and confused his enemies. He ordered an attack. 200 soldiers against 50,000. Everyone said it was madness. Everyone said it was suicide. Sergeant Menu led 30 volunteers into the Dominion rear lines. They moved through the night like shadows, following paths that should not have existed, using skills that came from a million years of hunting in the darkness. They destroyed the enemy communication array. They burned the ammunition depot. They killed Commander in his own command vehicle. The Dominion army woke up without leaders, without coordination, without ammunition. Chaos followed. 19 humans returned from the raid. 11 did not. Carried 2 of the bodies across 12 miles of enemy territory, through patrols and search parties and soldiers who wanted him dead. "We do not leave anyone behind," he said when they asked him why. "Never." On the 9th day, the Dominion forces began to retreat. High Commander watched from orbit. He could not believe what he was seeing. 50,000 soldiers running from 200 humans, the largest army the Dominion had ever assembled, broken and fleeing. "Let them go," his aide said. "The humans have won, it is over." But Captain did not let them go. "Pursue," he ordered. "Sir, they are retreating. We have won. They will come back. They will rebuild. They will attack another world and kill another civilization." His voice was hard. "We end this here." The humans chased the retreating army for 3 days. They did not stop to rest. They ate while walking. They slept in shifts of 20 minutes. They harassed, ambushed, and destroyed an enemy force 50 times their size. The Dominion soldiers, who had expected an easy victory, who had laughed at the weak humans, now ran in terror. Their army scattered into small groups that wandered the wasteland, leaderless and broken. And then silence. High Commander watched his sensors for hours. Nothing moved in Valley. Nothing moved in the surrounding territory. The Dominion presence in the system had been completely eliminated. By 200 humans. "How?" his aide whispered. "How is this possible?" Had no answer. He had seen the battle. He had watched the humans fight, but he still did not understand. They were small. They were fragile. They died easily and healed slowly. By every measure, they should have been destroyed in the first hour of the first day. Instead, they had won. On the battlefield below, the humans gathered their dead. They had lost 137 soldiers over 9 days, more than half their force. The survivors were wounded, exhausted, barely able to stand. But they were alive. Captain stood at the center of the valley, looking at the destruction around him. Bodies everywhere, human and Dominion, the ground black with ash and blood. Lieutenant limped to his side. Her uniform was torn and stained. Fresh bandages covered wounds that would leave scars. "It is over," she said. "No," shook his head slowly. "This is just the beginning. The Dominion will hear what happened here. They will know that humans can fight, that we do not give up, that we do not surrender." "What happens next?" Looked up at the sky, where the Alliance ships waited. "Next, we make them understand. We show them what humans really are, and then we win this war." Corporal approached, her medical bag empty, her hands stained red. "The wounded are stable," she reported. "We saved everyone we could." "How many?" 63 still standing. Another 20 who can fight if needed. 63 soldiers out of 200. They had paid a terrible price. But the Dominion had paid more. Sergeant Menu joined them, carrying the rifles of fallen friends. "What are your orders, Captain?" Looked at his soldiers, the survivors, the ones who had refused to die, who had fought against impossible odds, who had done what no one believed they could do. Rest, he said, heal, remember our dead. He paused, and prepare, because this war is not over, and we are going to finish it. The battlefield was silent, the fighting had stopped, the enemy was gone. But the silence was not peace, it was a promise. The humans were still here, and they were just getting started. They called human soldiers weak. Then the battlefield went silent. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Black Ridge. The War Council chamber was full again. Representatives from every species in the Galactic Alliance had gathered, but this time the atmosphere was different. There was no laughter, no mockery, no pity. There was respect. The doors opened, and the human delegation entered. Colonel Park walked first. He had been promoted twice since the battle. He moved with a slight limp that would never fully heal. His face carried new scars. His eyes carried new weight, but he walked straight and proud. Behind him came Captain, also promoted. A fresh scar ran along her jaw from the fighting in the trenches. She still moved like a soldier, alert and ready. Sergeant Minu followed. He had lost an eye in the final pursuit. He wore a patch over it now, but his remaining eye was as sharp as ever. He carried himself like a man who had seen everything the universe could throw at him and survived. Corporal walked beside him. She had aged during the battle. Gray streaks ran through her hair that had not been there before. Her hands, the hands that had saved so many lives, were steady but tired. And finally Corporal Han, still the youngest, still the quietest. Her right hand was missing 2 fingers. Her left eye was damaged. She was also the most decorated soldier in the unit, covered in medals from a dozen grateful species. The 77th Expeditionary Force had arrived with 200 soldiers. 63 remained. High Commander rose from his seat. It was a gesture of respect that his species reserved only for proven warriors. The other alien commanders followed his lead. Welcome, said, welcome, warriors of Earth. Colonel nodded once, thank you. The chamber was silent. Everyone remembered how these same aliens had laughed at the humans 3 months ago. Everyone remembered the jokes about weak creatures who needed to sleep. Everyone remembered the certainty that the humans would die in minutes. Now the humans stood before them, survivors of a battle that should have been impossible. We underestimated you, said finally, all of us. We looked at your small bodies and soft skin and saw weakness. We were wrong. Most species make that mistake, replied. There was no anger in his voice, no pride, just simple truth. Help us understand. A commander leaned forward, his 4 arms spread in a gesture of openness. Your species has no natural armor, no regeneration, no telepathy, no enhanced strength. How did you survive? Was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but clear. Everything tried to kill us. The aliens waited. The planet we evolved on is a death world by galactic standards. The temperature swings from burning heat to freezing cold. Predators hunted us every day. Diseases evolved to destroy us. Natural disasters wiped out entire populations. Even our own star tries to kill us with radiation. He paused. We were not born strong. We were born weak, but weakness is not the same as helplessness. We learn to adapt. We learn to build tools. We learn to work together. We learn that survival is not about being the strongest. It is about refusing to give up. Captain stepped forward with a data chip. We recovered Dominion communications from the final days of the battle, she said. This is the last transmission from their commander before his forces scattered. She played the recording. The alien voice was distorted, filled with static and fear, but one word came through clearly. Run. Just that, over and over, run, run, run. The War Council was silent. We are not the strongest species in this alliance, continued. We are not the fastest or we cannot see in the dark like we cannot survive wounds like we cannot read minds like He looked around the room. But we do not give up. We do not surrender, we adapt. We endure, we survive. That is what makes us human. A representative spoke through their translation device. Your losses were severe, more than half your force. How can you consider this a victory? Sergeant Minu answered. His voice was rough, tired. Because we are still here. The Dominion sent 50,000 soldiers to destroy us. Where are they now? No one had an answer. Corporal spoke next. Her voice was gentle but firm. We lost friends, brothers, sisters. We will carry their memories forever, but they did not die for nothing. They died protecting something larger than themselves. That is what soldiers do. The youngest voice came last. Corporal Han, barely 21 years old, the most dangerous sniper in the galaxy. They called us weak, she said simply. They laughed at us. They sent their best soldiers to kill us in our sleep. They bombed us for 6 hours and sent 50,000 soldiers to finish us off. She paused. Now they run when they see humans. Now they whisper about ghosts in the darkness. Now they know what we really are. The War Council voted unanimously. Human forces would be deployed to the front lines of every major engagement. The species that everyone had mocked would lead the Alliance to victory. The war that the galaxy thought was unwinnable ended in 18 months. After the final battle, after the Dominion surrendered and their empire collapsed, historians from 100 species tried to explain how creatures so fragile had changed everything. They studied human biology, psychology, culture, and history. They analyzed every battle, every strategy, every impossible victory. They never quite captured it. Because the truth was not something that fit in reports or studies. The truth was in the way Corporal held a dying soldier's hand through an entire night, refusing to let him die alone, telling him stories about Earth until he finally closed his eyes. The truth was in the way Private Han climbed back into her sniper position with broken ribs because her squad needed cover. The truth was in the way Sergeant Minu volunteered for every suicide mission and somehow walked back every time, carrying his people with him. The truth was in the way Lieutenant charged into 500 enemy soldiers with 40 troops because the wall had to hold and she would not let it fall. And the truth was in the quiet words Colonel Park said to his soldiers before the Battle of Black Ridge, words that became a rallying cry for human forces across the galaxy, words that were carved into monuments and taught to children and remembered for generations. They think we are weak because we can die. Show them we are strong because we choose to fight anyway. Years later, when peace had spread across the galaxy and the Dominion was nothing but a bad memory, a young alien asked High Commander about the humans. The old warrior was retired now, living quietly on his home world. What were they really like? The young one asked. The humans. Was silent for a long time. He thought about the small creatures who had walked into his war council, the ones everyone had laughed at, the ones who had saved the galaxy. They were fragile, he said finally. They broke easily, they bled and suffered and died. Then how did they win? Smiled. It was not a common expression for his species, but he had learned it from his human friends. Because they did not know they were supposed to lose, and because weakness made them stronger than any of us. He looked up at the stars. Never underestimate humans, he said. They will always surprise you, they will always find a way, and they will never ever give up. The story of the 77th Expeditionary Force passed into legend. Songs were sung about them. Stories were told. Children across 1,000 worlds learned about the small, soft creatures from a tiny planet who had faced impossible odds and refused to die. And somewhere on Earth, in a quiet cemetery, 63 names were carved into stone, the ones who had given everything so others could live. They had been called weak. They had proven themselves strong. And the galaxy would never forget. The end.